We reviewed Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, and...
Guys, it wasn't bad.
I'm gonna
Shocking, I know.
I'm gonna preface and say I am not a Lord of the Rings aficionado. I'm not a Tolkien fan. I am acutely aware of what these actors have done to ruin this process leading up to the show coming out, and they've done everything in their power to make it awful. But I am not judging this based on being a Tolkien adaptation.
I'm not an aficionado either. Wesley, are you? Where do you stand on that?
I would not call myself an aficionado, but I do love like the Silmarillion.
Okay.
And I am a fan of the films. I read the books growing up, but they weren't super important to me.
Do you like all of the films?
Not The Hobbit. Movies,
yeah, some people really hated the Hobbit movies.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of those at all. They have their moments, but as a whole, no.
Let's get ratings.
Out of what?
Out of 10.
Out of 10?
Oh. Tough.
Maybe we should do 5 stars. What do you think?
3.5.
Oh. 3.5 is high.
3.5.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say 3.75.
Okay.
I was thinking more like 2.5 or a 3.
Yep. I'm basing it on how few times I paused it during the show.
How many times you felt like running away?
Yeah, which was very,
which is usually
very
a lot.
Yeah, so I understand that this is not Lord of the Rings, so you do not need to.
It's essentially fan fiction, and I would like for it to be regarded that way and not as part of the canon.
So let's treat it as something that's not Lord of the Rings and just something we're watching to watch.
Because they're making it as a contribution to the canon of this universe, I feel like it should be judged on the merit of that.
Okay, then it's bad.
It is fan fiction, essentially about Middle Earth, because it's like 3,000 years behind the rest of the stories that people are familiar with.
I will say that Galadriel is the absolute weakest length of this show. Length?
You think?
I think she's absolutely the worst part of the show.
She had some of the most screen time.
Yes, and she was the worst part of the show. Whenever the show was on Bronwyn, who I really, 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 really liked. Whenever the show was on, what was the other, the guy
Thank you.
So whenever the show was on Bronwyn, I really, really liked. Whenever the show was on, what's his name? Elrond. I thought he was fine, except when he's talking to her, right? That stuff sucked. I liked Bronwyn's storyline because she's a mother who's protecting a child. That was fine. I did not buy the actress as Galadriel as some type of war-hardened.
How do you feel she compares to Cate Blanchett's Galadriel?
Not the same. My biggest complaint is now it's going to feel like I'm going to complain the whole time. This show suffers from a stunning lack of screen presence and star power. There is a hole in this show of generic actors who do not look like they belong on something of this scope. Every time I saw, what's his name? Thondir? Is that his name?
Who is
in the beginning with Galadriel and the guy, and they're on the not her brother, they're on the adventure together. They're looking for Sauron.
That
guy.
Yeah. That actor sucked.
All I thought of was like,
terrible.
I was like, you know who that is? That's not Cillian Murphy. That's all it is. Whenever I saw the king from the first episode, I'm like, that's just discount Tom Hiddleston. Every single one of them was
Loki.
Every one of them is a discount version of a far better actor that they clearly, with this budget, couldn't afford. Yeah. But I'm not judging it based on
What
this.
do you mean they couldn't afford?
That's what I'm saying. Apparently they couldn't.
Because they spent it all on special effects?
Apparently. Yeah.
I was looking at it and I was like, okay, this looks expensive. It doesn't look cheap in any way, but it doesn't look like $500 million of production.
No.
Where is all the money going? It's like a money laundering scheme.
There is a drastic drop in production value from episode 1 to episode 2.
And I'm curious about the decision to do a 2-episode premiere. Did they think that would hook more people in?
They would have been better off just doing the first episode.
I think so too.
First. I also want to point out that my biggest complaint beyond that is that the story is extremely meandering. It doesn't get to the point quickly. Well, they're
switching between different characters who have not crossed paths yet.
But since I didn't hate the characters, I didn't mind the meandering.
Right.
Who's your favorite character so far?
Bronwyn. No doubt about it. Bronwyn,
really?
She was great. Maybe I'm partial because I find that actress quite fetching.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think that might be it.
No, and she was great in Homeland.
What did you think of her in the fight scenes?
I took the
because
idea.
I know you hate when women in fight scenes are portrayed as stronger physically than is possible.
I mean, that's going to happen in high fantasy anyways. But, like, in this case, it's like mine is more about her intentions and her motivations, which are to protect her son, which I found to be very human and relatable. Mm-hmm. Whereas when I see Galadriel, all it looks like is they took a guy character and they transplanted it into a woman's role. And I understand.
I don't agree with that.
Okay. How do you interpret it?
I want to mention offhand, though, that I hate Bronwyn's, like, will they, won't they with Arendir. There's literally zero chemistry.
No, there's no
zero. You have no background of when they actually met and were, like, getting to know each other. You just have him leaving.
They look like they just got on set for the first day and, like, offered each other a donut. And
and then interrupted by the sequence where this, like, ill cow is brought to her. And then he, like, squirts blood sludge into his hand and doesn't wash it off before trying to touch her. I was just, like, disgusted by it. And I just think that they had no, like, on-screen chemistry whatsoever.
No, they
Arendir was one of my least favorite characters because he seemed to have absolutely no personality whatsoever.
It was very Anakin and Padme.
And with what you said about Galadriel,
I couldn't stand
I don't
her.
think she's great or anything, but I certainly don't think that it's a case of them making a male character in all the writing, but then it happens to be a woman by coincidence. I disagree. She had her life saved by a man in what did you think of that scene? They would have never done that if it were written to be Mary Sue type of character.
Okay, the scene that bothered me was when she gets back and her and the guy are talking about, like, her going back out to search for Sauron. Again, I don't remember the characters' names in almost all of this. But, like, it felt like one where if you had reversed the roles, it would have been a woman begging the man to stay. And this just felt, I don't buy it from her. It's the actress. I don't buy it from normally I'm like, oh, it's the source material. I don't buy it from the actress in this one. I'm not a fan.
You don't believe Elrond...
I don't believe the lady who plays Galadriel.
Trying to convince Galadriel not to go.
It just felt...
You think that's more of a man's journey?
It feels that way to me. Yeah, it does.
Okay. I feel like I don't know enough about Galadriel's character, her personality, to judge whether that's believable. But I don't think it's a gendered thing as much as you're saying it was. And I also, like, I did have a gripe with how the female characters like, you might have predicted this from the piece that we were reading before the premiere happened about the female cast, and they were saying, you know, they're righting wrongs and they love the balance and how women have agency in the show. And I think they definitely have not too much agency, but way too much of the movement of the plot is just the female characters doing things and the men reacting to the things that they're doing. Other than Arendir's plot line, his subplot.
Yeah.
Other than that, there's nothing being done by men. It's all the women doing things and moving the plot along. And men are either holding them back from doing something that's obviously necessary, like Galadriel and Elrond, or the men are just reacting to things like after Bronwyn took the whatever that goblin, I mean, it wasn't an orc, she took some goblin's head, decapitated head, and was like, see, I was right, now everyone needs to listen to me. And she's like, that's kind of a girl boss moment. So I'm a little surprised that you were favorable towards Bronwyn over Galadriel.
The part where she comes back to the village and she argues with him about, like, talking to the king, not Bronwyn, Galadriel.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the actress. I felt more emotion on the face of Bronwyn than I did on Galadriel, and I understand that the point is that she's supposed to be stoic. I don't want stoic.
Yeah,
from
she's
that
an elf.
I just don't want stoic from that character. The High King was also awful, but he's not in it that much.
I don't want to seem stupid for asking this, but like, what happened to the other elves? Why was she stranded in the ocean? Where did they go? Why? It seemed like they were just assumed into the sky.
They're gone.
Yeah.
Like, what does it mean?
Essentially heaven.
They died?
No, I think they went back to whatever their realm is. You know, they're stand-ins for angels, essentially. Yeah.
I also
Valinor?
Yeah.
I thought that was a physical place and not a spiritual realm.
Why not both?
You're like the king of asking why not both about that.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I see.
I just
this entire
found it
story as a
confusing.
the
metaphor
son was
for-
also
then-
very annoying. This Bronwyn's kid was also very annoying, but that's just
Oh yeah, he was.
the Durin and his wife liked it. I liked the whole scene with them having dinner. in the second
no,
episode.
no.
I liked it.
They
I
they
liked
had
it.
no chemistry either.
I disagree.
I thought that was fine.
I thought I saw a certain type of relationship that I've seen in real life.
Yeah.
Is what I would say.
I don't know.
I enjoyed that one. I was like, when they come in and she's like doting on him and she's like, "You're gonna stay for dinner." I love
I don't
that
think
stuff.
it was
Like, he's the
immediately
one person who
obvious
can
that
do
they
that
were
as well.
married.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's obvious because he knows that he's bringing them back.
Well, of
to
course.
His, yeah, but
it
I
becomes
like
obvious
that
because
scene.
of that. But
No.
I don't think that they actually have any type of obvious chemistry
don't know, I saw it.
in the show.
Maybe I don't know.
But I
associate it with
do
something I've
see
seen in
I
real
do
life.
see the appeal of the dynamic that the woman, like his wife, is the one softening his heart,
Yeah, I liked it.
and he needs the emotional convincing
Okay,
more
when-
than the intellectual part.
When she's doing the thing where he's like basically bowing to his wife's wishes, right? I like that because it feels real to me how you would see that in the real world, right? You see that in like a boardroom scene or something out in the real world and it feels manufactured to me. Seeing this between a husband and a wife over some long held grudge, I buy that. That didn't bother me. Again, I do want to I want to point out that this is also you have to kind of go into this and know that what you're watching is like, I'm not judging it as if it's a Lord of the Rings production, which means I'm already giving them more
leeway than they deserve,
Than they
yeah.
deserve. Absolutely. It felt like a high budget 90s Hercules or Xena warrior princess. It really did.
It felt like a really long. You know when you buy a TV and it has a demonstration of what the TV is capable of.
Yeah.
That's what I felt like I was watching. A very very long version of.
Who was your favorite character?
My favorite character in this. That's a.
I also
hard
like
question.
Nori a lot. I thought Nori.
I think Nori was the best in my opinion.
I
There's
liked
just
that plot line the most. I'll say that.
I harp the most in the show about there is an unexplainable amount of importance to the concept of an actor being able to portray something that is warm when they need to be warm and stoic when they need to be stoic. But when you have a character like Galadriel, where I understand that the plot line is that she's supposed to be like that that she's
hardened
like
by
because-
trauma of
and
war
if I
and
don't
loss.
if I don't buy it right from the get, right, it's very hard to pull me back in. But the characters that had to be warm and display something that felt outside of that realm, I bought into. So if they lean into those aspects, and if they were to get a different actress, and I couldn't even think of one off the top of my head who I would have liked to see. Like normally, if I tell you I don't like an actress in a role, I want to hit you with like an example of who I think would be a good person to play that character. I can't really think of one that I would want to see as Galadriel, but it didn't work for me.
The thing I was gonna say before we were live that I said I was gonna save is that her interactions with, I forget his name, but the man that she was adrift with, reminded me of a discount version of the Northmen.
Yeah.
Between Olga and Alexander Skarsgård's character. The names escaped me. But
Endless?
she was like the discount version of Anya Taylor-Joy's character in The Northman.
Then
at
maybe
that point.
Anya Taylor-Joy was the better hire here.
That would have been
for this
great.
role.
Yeah.
All of these characters felt like there could have been another actor that could have replaced him. There was at least
Some
two
of
of
them
them.
I just felt were completely off. Like every time I looked at Elrond, I was like, whatever he's doing, he's good at, but he's not Elrond.
Yeah.
He's discount Neil Patrick Harris.
Oh,
And,
yeah,
like,
he totally is.
and
He's
that's all I can see.
I think Durin might also be one of the better ones.
True.
Like I really do.
I'm also a huge fan of the guy who plays the king, Peter Mullen. He's not as a person, but as an actor, he plays Durin's father. And as soon as I saw him, I was like, okay, that's a little bit of star power gravitas there.
So there's a distinct lack of, and I do think the story meanders. But like I said, if you're just looking for, I would rather watch this than Game of Thrones most days.
Yeah.
Not necessarily this show, but I'm saying if I was to have to pick between Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, I would take Lord of the Rings.
Huh. I agree with what you said earlier that this is not Lord of the Rings.
No, it's not.
But whatever it is, I don't hate so far.
Yeah.
It's a step above. I watched one episode of The Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
And it was like, I'm out. I'm 100% out. This is trash.
I'm the hardest.
I don't feel that way.
I feel like I'm one of the hardest people to keep watching something, right? So the fact that I was able to get through this without pausing it and being overly offensive. I mean, there was plenty of stuff where I'm like, I'm sure I would be offended if I was up on the books. Yeah. And I understand that, but that's like, I'm in like a weird, like kind of corner of like the fan base where it's like they're not looking for me exactly. They're looking for someone who's both not aware of how awful Hollywood is at doing adaptations, but also not familiar with the source material, but also knows who Tolkien is, right? They want you to know who he is, but have not read the books and just assume that his name means relevance, which it does. Yeah. But also not be familiar enough to actually criticize it. I'm kind of those parts, but I'm also aware of how bad they are at adapting. Right. So I'm hyper acute to when that stuff is pointed out.
Yeah, I dislike that it's crafted for mass appeal over catering to the dedicated fans.
Yeah. Well, it's got like a 38.
And I think an aspect of this is like, we had such low expectations because they made a huge mistake with how they marketed this. The messaging in how they marketed Rings of Power was like
atrocious.
It was inescapable. It was almost like all they wanted to talk about, and then you actually watch it, and it's like they wanted you to reel it back in and be pleasantly surprised because it was so overpowering. How many of the actors were preaching and making heavy-handed remarks about like the social implications of their casting decisions, and the story was like, I mean, saying that the women have such agency, you don't have to say it in that, you don't have to phrase it that way. You can just say like, the women in the show play these important roles, and here's why. And
also, why gender it at all? Like these you
don't even have to comment on that. Yeah.
These amazing characters that we got to portray is automatically not divisive. Right. I want to point out. Okay, I'm going to adjust. I'm going to say it's a 3. But if they took Galadriel and they just chucked her into the molten river, into the molten lava, if they got rid of her, I think it would be a 3.
I don't know why you hate Galadriel's character so much.
I do not like her at all. I do not like that portrayal. Bronwyn, all the way. I'm Team Bronwyn today.
I want to know the backstory of what happened to the father of her kid.
Yeah. Yep.
And I hope that, I mean, I know they're going to go into it further, but I don't like the...
and yes, they had literally zero chemistry.
I don't like the pairing of her and Arendir.
I couldn't get over
at all
her son's voice. Like they cast him as
so
little
obnoxious.
Boy, and it's like it must have changed right before they were filming, and it was like, Mom.
Well, I don't know. Maybe he's supposed to be angsty and pubescent.
Yeah, he definitely brought that energy.
And they talk about this is actually a funny example of like where you could do social messaging in a fantasy where it's not as where it would be not as noticeable if people weren't so hypersensitive to it. Now they're like, we don't normally have relationships between elves and humans, right? And you're like, that's fine if you want to do that story, but like 10 years ago it would have been a lot, like they actually didn't harp on it.
The Rings.
And they didn't harp on it too badly, or I expected it to be a more clumsily done
bit. Do you understand what we're trying to say?
Yes, do you get it? Yeah. But you're right. There's that dude that like her and that dude together do not have good chemistry. The bar owner
hatred for
guy
elves was a prevalent thing that kept coming up.
The bar owner guy was great. He was
kind of wish you'd put it on a shirt.
Yes. Well, that's why he's great. He's committed to the bit, right? And he's like he that guy was fantastic.
Bronwyn's son's friend did a really good job of like that scene, the bar fight scene.
Oh, your mom's
he was trembling with anger.
Your mom's a slut. That's
he can't handle his mead.
It's like your mom's into elves. She's totally a bad person.
So you watched House of the Dragon, right?
Yes.
And you liked it?
I watched the first. I have not finished the second episode yet.
Well, how do you feel they measure up?
They're so different. It's very hard to.
I don't know why they're being compared so heavily. Like, I don't think they're going for the same thing.
I would say that my preference here would be the Rings of Power, but that's solely based on my preferences of type of material. I would say, as far as being an adaptation and probably more faithful to the material, you're probably better off with the House of the Dragon. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I know
they're both gunning for the same social message, though.
But this is kind of like a perfect.
I think I like Rings of Power more on just the principle that it's more family friendly.
Yes, yeah. Like,
and
I don't have to.
and
it's also less inherently political
lighthearted
than political than House of the Dragon is.
And
like
Game of Thrones has always been political. Yeah.
Well, no, like it's very obvious what they're trying to say. Whereas with this one, I was like, okay, like this one is being touted as the one that is going to be over the top with its messaging, right?
Yeah.
Rings of Power, but it wasn't.
Were they trying to get a hate watch audience intentionally? Because
maybe,
it feels like that.
Yeah. Well, I think.
Or are they just so up their own asses that they didn't know that's how they
the only
came
way
across.
that they know how to communicate it is that, these people are going to hate it.
The Rings of Power people?
Rings of Power, yeah.
I think they're just detached from the average person and don't realize that people hate them for talking that way. I don't even remember, like I said, for me, a big part of media, especially if we're talking a first watch here and not a rewatch, I haven't gotten a chance to rewatch it yet. I wouldn't even be able to give you a strong opinion on a story as a whole unless I can watch it more than once. When I'm reviewing something that I've only watched once, I'm going on how it made me feel, not the actual strong points. I will say that the CGI was spotty in episode 2.
I wouldn't have noticed.
Was a little bit more spotty in episode 2. I thought the first episode was good for the most part.
I'm gonna stick with what I said, to where like I would watch it and be like, wow, this doesn't look cinematic.
No,
like,
it looks like New Zealand.
Well, it looks like a travel commercial or a magazine cover.
Also,
there's no shadows. Like,
well, they
the
went
darkness
with
was bright.
Extremely, like the oranges and the yellows are extremely overpowering to make it feel more vibrant. Yeah. Right.
But even that, like where, like the scene with the goblin, right?
Yeah.
Is that what
whatever he was? He wasn't an orc.
It was like it didn't. There was no shadows.
This is why I hate
dynamics to it. There should have been there's nothing that you couldn't see, nothing concealed.
This is what I hate about reviewing this stuff. There's just somebody in the comments right now, like, that's not the name. Yeah, like there's a hardcore person.
There was a creature of some kind.
I apologize to you personally that I offended you, but I don't know what it is. So.
Do you want to keep reviewing it?
Air for my opinion.
I don't know. Maybe.
People in the chat
tell us what you guys think, if we should keep reviewing it. I'm afraid you might be too angry at us for not hating it.
Not hating as much as as we should. Apparently,
if you haven't watched it, you're gonna be biased because the coverage of it before it came out was absolutely insufferable.
And to be fair, I'm watching it, I'm like, I should hate this right now, but it's and to be fair, it could end up that way. It could end up a complete dumpster fire down the road.
I like to think I'm good at disregarding that and just taking it for what it is.
I struggle with that. So the fact that I was
there's coverage like that about literally every show.
Yep.
If it's to do hit pieces or if it's to create hype for it. Well, either way, it's going to focus on the same stupid social issues.
That's why I turn stuff off when I don't like it, because I'm not going to hate review something because I just don't think that I need to. That's necessary. There's plenty of people that do that and do that very well, that are very eloquent in the way that they tear stuff down. I don't really have that capacity. I like to talk about stuff that I actually like, and I think we've been pretty fair here today, saying look, there's plenty of stuff to complain about. But
and to think I had to convince you that reviewing Rings of Power was a good idea because you were so afraid it would be terrible.
So yes, and yesterday I was talking to Andrew about that.
Thank God that clip that we played, that soap opera-esque promo clip of the cast, was not actually used in the show. But the fact that they even made it for official use, astounding.
37% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes.
Why?
37%? Because they did this themselves. I'm not gonna say it shouldn't be.
It's
if they had made this generic fantasy show number 2, the Lord of the...
You could literally call it anything and not make it Middle Earth.
Yes, and just make that, and you will get people that are 100 times more sympathetic to your cause. That would be a much higher score.
They wouldn't have the same street cred that would get them the viewership, so they had to siphon viewers off of an existing fan base, and they want the new audience that isn't familiar with it, so they can't criticize any errors they make in continuity or character development, because there is only one or maybe two characters that appear in the later films.
Which is why, like, I can't be mad at the fans for not liking it, because
it's Galadriel and one other that is...
I don't know who the other one was. So.
Forget who the other one is.
Character?
There are two characters in Rings of Power that are also characters in the other films.
Elrond?
Is Elrond in the other ones?
Yeah, it's what's his, Agent Smith.
So it's like they're keeping
Weaving.
it low stakes as far as like their potential for errors.
So
Also
they're gonna
Sauron,
milk this forever too. This is gonna go on forever as long as they can't admit that they're wrong. If the viewer, I was half expecting the feed to cut out last night, like if it's as big as they say. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.